Here's a full tutorial for dealing with a traffic stop when traveling privately. All right, everyone, let's talk about a situation we've all either feared or wondered about: getting pulled over while traveling in your private capacity. You've got no license plates and no driver's license because you're not engaged in commerce. The key here is to remember that you're in the right. You're not driving, you're traveling. And this distinction is where the magic happens. I'm going to walk you through exactly what to do from the moment those flashing lights come on, all the way to the sweet victory you'll get in court, and trust me, you'll win this case with ease. Step 1. When the cop pulls you over, first things first, hit record on your phone. You want everything documented and for your own safety purposes. The officer might be wearing a body cam, but you need your own footage. This is crucial to ensure that your story stays clear and untampered with. Stay calm and confident. You have nothing to fear here. This is an opportunity to stand up for your rights and set the record straight. When the officer approaches, you're going to handle this calmly but firmly.
Sir, ma'am, I pulled you over because you were speeding. Can I see your license and registration?
Good evening, officer. Am I being detained or am I free to go?
Now, this question puts the officer on the defensive. They need to tell you right away whether you're actually being detained or not. If they don't detain you, they have to let you go. If they say you're being detained, you'll ask for the lawful reason.
You're being detained for speeding. Can I see your license and registration?
Step 2. The crucial legal distinctions. Now, this is where you take control of the interaction by making the crucial distinctions between commercial driving and private travel.
Officer, I am traveling privately and I'm not engaged in any commercial activity. I don't need a driver's license or registration to exercise my right to travel. I am not operating a motor vehicle, as defined by law, nor am I a driver, as the law defines it. I'm simply exercising my constitutionally protected right to travel.
Let's break this down. The officer is expecting you to be a regular driver, under the assumption that all traffic laws apply to everyone equally. But here's where we school them on legal definitions. A motor vehicle, by federal law, is defined as something used for commerce, transporting goods or people for hire. You're not doing that. A driver, under the same law, is someone operating a vehicle for compensation. So, you clarify that these definitions don't apply to you because you're not involved in any commercial activity.
I'm going to need your license anyway.
With respect, officer, I'm not required to provide a license because I'm not engaged in any regulated commercial activity. Unless you can prove that I am using this vehicle for hire, you don't have jurisdiction over me. Could you please cite the specific law I've violated?
Step 3. The question of speeding. Now, the officer might bring up speeding, and here's where your defense gets even stronger.
You were speeding, that's why I pulled you over.
Speeding regulations apply to drivers of motor vehicles engaged in commerce. Since I am not driving commercially, those laws don't apply to me. Could you show me where in the law it says that private travelers are bound by commercial speed regulations?
Pause and let the officer think for a second. They likely don't have an answer. Step 4. Prepare for the possibility of arrest. If the officer insists on issuing a ticket or making an arrest, do not resist. But this is where your payday is born. I do not consent to any unlawful detainment or arrest. You are acting under color of law, violating my constitutional right to travel. This will be addressed in court. Step 5. The courtroom. This is where we win big. When you get to court, this is where you absolutely destroy the officer's credibility with cross-examination. Here's how that plays out.
Officer, how long have you been a law enforcement officer?
5 years.
And in that time, how many traffic tickets would you estimate you've written?
They'll give you a number, likely a lot. This is important because it shows they are well-versed in issuing tickets, but not necessarily in understanding the law. We are going to expose this and make them out to be an incompetent witness or negligent.
Can you please define for the court the legal definition of a motor vehicle under 18 U.S.C. Section 31?
9 times out of 10, they won't know the legal definition. If they don't, they'll stumble. If they do, proceed to the next step.
So, according to that legal definition, a motor vehicle is a vehicle used in commerce, correct?
Yes.
Now, can you prove that I was engaged in commercial activity at the time you pulled me over?
The officer will almost certainly not be able to prove this, because you were not engaged in commerce. This is the game over moment.
Can you define driver as it appears in legal statutes? Does it not pertain to someone operating a vehicle for hire or compensation?
Again, the officer either won't know, or they'll have to agree with the legal definition. By asking the officer to define critical legal terms like motor vehicle and driver, you're demonstrating their lack of knowledge about the very laws they are supposed to be enforcing. Most officers are not well versed in the specific legal definitions found in statutes like 18 U.S.C. Section 31. When they can't answer these basic questions during cross-examination, it will highlight their incompetence as a witness. For example, if the officer stumbles when defining what a motor vehicle is under the law or cannot explain the distinction between commercial and private activity, they will appear incompetent. This demonstrates that they don't fully understand the statutes they are trying to enforce. Failure to establish jurisdiction. If the officer continues with the arrest or ticket despite the fact that you've clarified you're not engaged in commerce, it shows a negligent disregard for your rights. At that point, the officer is acting without proper legal authority. You've clearly explained that the traffic laws governing commercial activities don't apply to private travelers, yet they continue to enforce those laws, potentially violating your constitutional rights. Negligent enforcement of law. The fact that the officer didn't properly assess whether you were engaged in commerce before enforcing commercial traffic regulations could also demonstrate negligence in their duty. Law enforcement officers are expected to apply the law appropriately, and failing to do so shows a lack of due diligence in fulfilling their responsibilities. Why this matters in court. Incompetence as a witness. If the officer can't answer basic legal questions during cross-examination, it undermines their credibility. They come off as someone who doesn't fully understand the law, which can lead the judge or jury to doubt their entire testimony. A witness who doesn't understand key aspects of the law can't reliably testify that they were enforcing it correctly. This opens the door for dismissal of the case, as it becomes clear the officer wasn't acting with full knowledge of the applicable legal standards. Negligence in law enforcement. If the officer knew, or should have known, that you weren't engaged in commercial activity, continuing to detain or ticket, you could be seen as negligent behavior. This is especially true if you repeatedly clarified your position as a private traveler, and they still proceeded as if you were operating under commercial laws. Negligence strengthens your case if you decide to file a civil rights lawsuit under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983. The officer's failure to properly apply the law shows they violated your rights, whether through negligence or incompetence, and this can lead to a favorable judgment in your counterclaim. Step 6. The final move. Once the officer admits that they cannot prove you were engaged in commerce, you move for dismissal.
Your Honor, the officer has failed to establish that I was engaged in any commercial activity, which is necessary to apply the statutes they are citing. As such, I move for immediate dismissal of this case based on lack of jurisdiction.
The court will have no choice but to dismiss the case. Step 7. Filing the counterclaim, your payday. Now that the case has been dismissed, it's time for you to go on the offensive. You can file a lawsuit under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983 for violations of your civil rights under color of law. Here's what you'll be suing for: false arrest, false imprisonment, time spent in jail, if any, emotional distress, towing fees if your car was impounded, lost wages if you missed work due to the arrest, and don't forget, you're going after punitive damages because the officer acted with reckless disregard for your constitutional rights. The courts take violations of civil rights very seriously, and if they see that the officer failed to understand basic legal definitions, your claim for punitive damages will be strong. Conclusion. Teaching others. So as you can see, standing up for your rights in this situation is not only possible, it's simple. The law is clear, and as long as you remain calm, confident, and knowledgeable, you can walk away from this with your freedom intact and, potentially, a payday from the counterclaim. Teach this to others, and let's start holding these public servants accountable when they step beyond their authority. Share and follow if you like this content.